Hi everyone and welcome to a new season of um possibilities. I am your host, Danny Steeves, and thank you so much for joining me here today. I am really excited because it has been a while since I have done an episode, but I am back for a new episode in a all new season. Uh, First of all, before we get going on the show today, I I want to say that I missed doing the show, but as I said, um, I am back and ready to bring you many more episodes. Um, just a brief um just a brief reason why I haven't been doing episodes. Um, because I was having trouble with my audio. Um, but I have it all figured out now, so I am ready to go. And hopefully have hopefully you can hear me okay. Anyway, on with today's show. Today I'm gonna be joined by Kayla Besse. Um, now Kayla is an accessibility coordinator with the Blackburn Festival. Um, so as you can, if you've been watching the show for a while, you will know that I I I have a real love for accessibility. Well, obviously, because what the show is all about, but I have a real love for figures. Um, and if you combine those two, it really well, so um, it's really good. Um, so I because I'm really passionate on both of those things. So I'm really excited to talk to Taylor today and see how those things, things intertwine with each other. So, um, he's not quite here yet. So, what I'll do now is take a bit of a break and be right back with more possibilities and tell the best. Thank you. Welcome back to Possibilities. Joining me now is Kayla Besse, the accessibility coordinator of the Platform Festival Theater, located in Stratford, Ontario, Canada. Welcome, welcome to Possibilities, Kayla.
Hi, Danny. Thanks so much for having me with you today. Great to be here.
Hey, no problem. So, so, um, I'm excited to have you here. So I, I wanted to begin by um you sharing with me how 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 you got into the accessibility role that you are in.
Sure, yeah, I can take you on a bit of the journey that I took to get to this place.
Yeah,
So I went to the University of Guelph. I was studying English literature and theater studies, both in my undergrad and then in a master's degree. And it wasn't really until graduate school that I learned about disability studies as a field of research and practice. And so, within my work in the English and theater department, I began to insert disability studies into that, and I was interested in representations of disabled people in literature and on stage and in film. So I was researching memoir in particular and histories of those representations. So that was kind of the beginning there. And then
yeah,
after I finished school, I worked at an arts-based research center called the Revision Center for Art and Social Justice.
yeah,
Um, and that's where I began some research on relaxed performance practices, which are still very dear to me to this day. And after that, I worked at the Tangled Art Gallery in Toronto, which is a disability run art gallery that exhibits deaf and disabled artists. And I was their public education coordinator. So I was, learning a lot and sharing a lot about accessible curation practices and accessibility within the arts more
yeah.
broadly. Um, and then I've been at Stratford for just over a year now as their accessibility coordinator. So it's been a wild year, and I continue to learn a lot. And I'm so grateful to everyone that I've learned from to get to this point, and still continuing to learn all the time.
Um, that is great. I um, yeah, I, I love that. Now, now I'm curious based on what you said. Um, how, how did you, how did you know that accessibility is something that you wanted to pursue?
Something that I wanted to pursue, yeah. Well, I live with cerebral palsy, so I'm disabled myself. So
Really?
yeah. Um, so in part, I'd had that experience in my life of being disabled and, experiencing inaccessibility in general. And then when I was in school and, reading a lot of different minority literature, about
Yeah.
diverse gender experiences and race and colonization and
Mm,
um, all of that good stuff, I was considering how one category of difference that was not being assigned very much
yeah.
in reading lists and stuff was disability, and began to think, more critically about that, and um, began to be really interested in,
Yeah.
you know, blending that personal experience with theory and practice. And then it was really through being more in community with more disabled people that everything starts to click. So
Yeah. Um. So. Um. Uh. Um. With. And. Um. I imagine growing up, you were really into going to the theater um and seeing seeing shows and um like um representation on movies um and all kinds of media. So what um let me ask you this. we'll, we'll, we'll talk a bit more about this in in a little bit. Um, do you think we um we are doing a good job at um giving people a voice with a disability in the media, whether that be on television or movies or um in the theater or what have you?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mm,
I mean, I'm sure you might agree that, growing up, um, these voices and stories were almost non-existent across any type
yeah,
of, right? I think especially in the age of social media is when we begin to see more diversity in general, but in particular for disabled people who, maybe it wasn't accessible for them to go to school or attend, performance training programs and things like that. So
yeah,
um, I think that, the internet and social media has been really instrumental in allowing more voices to be able to tell their own stories and for other people in our communities to have access to more of that difference that we were not seeing on mainstream media for so long.
yeah.
But I think there is a slow shift, right, towards um, some of that really exciting, diverse storytelling that still feels quite new and fresh. And I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of what that could
Uh,
be.
uh, how do how do you think we can uh how how can how can we bridge bridge that gap and make that more um common in the media?
Mm. I mean, I would encourage disabled and non-disabled people, to try to follow more disabled creators online and really diversify, what you intake on a daily basis. And I think
Yeah,
there's also a responsibility for larger media institutions and theaters to, I don't even want to say take a chance because I don't think it's a risky thing. I think it's really valuable when larger institutions do employ disabled people and begin to
yeah.
see the beauty in that experience. So I think it's a both an individual and a cultural shift that if we have disabled voices more and more on larger stages, then um, that can only serve greater understanding um, of our experiences for other people.
I love that. Um, yeah, and I don't I don't think we um I'll I'll share my experience as we go along here, but I I don't think we're doing um like we don't get me wrong, we are doing as good as we can, but I think we can do a lot better, and um that's why I'm really impressed with the work that you're doing. So so um I want to hear more about how you got into the role. How did Stratford approach you and say, "Hey, we need accessibility coordinator full full time." So how did that come about?
Yeah. Um, so before I was on staff with Stratford, actually, a member of their education department reached out to me and asked if I would participate in a teacher workshop day in 2021. 2021, I believe. They were doing, or 2022, um, they were doing a production of Richard III,
yeah,
and there was some talk that it had only been discovered quite recently that the body of the real Richard was likely disabled. And so there was a renewed interest in, okay, like, should we be casting this role as a disabled person? Like, what are the, what's at stake here when we read this
yeah,
character as a
yeah,
disabled man, as a disabled king? And so with my colleague, Yusuf Kadora, who's also a disabled actor, we did that sort of one day thing at Stratford. So they were like a little bit on my radar. And then a few months later, I saw that this job was posted for accessibility coordinator. And I interviewed for it and was successful. But I know that it came about um, because Stratford also has an anti-racism committee. And one of their recommendations in 2020 was to form an EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion department, which I am part of. And there was this intersectional understanding that in addition to people, paying attention to institutional racism, that
yeah.
we similarly need to pay attention to accessibility and disability within the theater. So there was that sort of intersectional desire um, for someone to do access work full time, which,
Yeah,
as I'm sure you know, is still, quite rare in big institutions. So I don't take that for granted. I really think it's still
yeah.
something.
So, um, I know I know you've been a year now. You said, but what were, what, what are some of the things that you have im- implemented in, in that short amount of time?
Sorry, I think I missed the question. What are some of the things I've done in the past year? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, in the past year since you've been, um, uh, in the role you are now.
Yeah. Um, a big part of my role and my whole department's role, actually, in our collective interest, is in community building.
Yeah,
As disabled people and other equity deserving groups, right, historically don't have that access to the theater, so they might not think of it as a place to look to go for a day out or for a trip, right? So I've been doing a lot of work to connect with disability community groups and invite them to shows, perhaps for the first time for a lot of them. Um,
yeah,
and so I do a lot of like patron focused work in addition to planning the different access shows that we offer. So right now that includes audio described, um, ASL interpreted, and relaxed performances. So I support the production side and making sure that those happen. Um, and then I also support any access needs of any staff or artists that are on site. So they can chat with me and we can, look at meeting their access needs as they arise as well.
um, and, um, what I'm gonna ask naive for a minute, and, um, like, I know what, what you mean by, ASL, um, uh, um, and the scripting video, but no, um, for those of, of my audience who don't, what would, how would you describe?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. It's important that I don't take for granted that everybody knows what that is. So
Yeah,
ASL interpreted shows are with American Sign Language, and those are primarily for deaf audiences who communicate using sign.
yeah,
Audio described shows are primarily for blind and low vision audiences. And
yeah,
so you hear a headset with like one earpiece, so you can still hear what's happening on stage with one ear. And then
yeah,
through the headset, there's a live describer in the sound booth, and they describe um, action and set pieces and costuming and things on stage
oh,
to make it more accessible for blind and low
yeah,
vision viewers.
yeah, yeah,
And then relaxed performance um, is a little bit self-explanatory, maybe. It's a more relaxed way of doing theater where it's created with autistic and other neurodivergent audience members in mind, or anyone who might have additional sensitivity to light and sound. So we might soften or reduce some of those really intense moments in a show to make it more
yeah,
accessible on a sensory level. In addition to not policing the audience behavior. So anyone who's been to a theater before, has probably been asked, okay, you sit still and silent in your seat for the whole time, and it's totally dark and you can't leave and come back. We eliminate that for a relaxed performance so that anyone who needs
yeah,
to move around or vocalize or stim is welcome to do so. And another key element is that we have a chill out space. So if you're feeling overstimulated or whatever the reason, you can remove yourself from the main area of the theater and self-regulate or color or whatever it is that you might want to do, so that you can just be your most comfortable self.
mhm. And what, what are those, um, what are those, um, what are those areas, um, available before you came to Scotland, or did you come up with that idea on your own?
No, none of this work is just me. I think that's important to clarify too, that it really takes a village and, people
Yeah,
with all these different
yeah,
skills in theater to make these things happen.
yeah,
All those offerings were happening before I was at the festival. Of course, like I mean, most performances were, or what am I saying? All performances were put on hold, with COVID. Um, but there had never been someone whose sole responsibility was accessibility before. So there were some staff people who were taking on the work of some of these access shows, but that was in addition to other responsibilities, whether in audience development or in HR. So they weren't able to have a full-time focus on accessibility in the same way that I am, but definitely they have been happening at the festival for some
yeah.
time. So I'm grateful to take those over from those people who've been doing that excellent work for a while.
So, so, your, your, your role is primarily focused on accessibility,
Mhm.
correct? And, um, whereas, uh, yes, as you mentioned, um, people were um, taking those more, more on before, but you are solely, um, dedicated to accessibility, right?
That's it.
So,
That's Yep. And
um,
work between departments to support different departments. So
yeah,
that's with the digital team and, supporting things like captioning online or marketing efforts and making those as accessible as they can be.
yeah.
Just thinking really holistically about what access looks like for all the different things that it takes to make a theater run.
But you mentioned you you mentioned something that I want to highlight here. Um, you mentioned in those in those relaxed performances, you 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 dim you dim the light of it, and you you may not have the same effect that you would have in those regular performances. My question to you is this: Do you do you think if you have all of those accessibility um needs in place, do you think that takes away from that performance or not?
Do I think accessible performances take away from the performance?
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely not. I think for one, it helps us, accessible performances help us to broaden our idea of who our target audiences are, because deaf and disabled audiences have historically been forgotten when we think about what it means to make art together, and
mm,
participate in art together. So that's one thing. And another is that, everyone who makes theater is in the business of accessibility and creativity and make believe.
yeah,
Um, so I think rather than seeing the work of access as something that takes
yeah,
away from the show, it's a really fun challenge, a lot of the time, in fact, all of the time, to say, okay, how might we do this thing just a little bit differently, or question some of our own, internalized biases about how a particular process might typically go, in order to not exclude as many people, even if that was inadvertent. So I think there's something really magical that I've seen happen when people who might not even see themselves as someone who quote unquote needs an accessible performance, they can look at that with a different perspective,
yeah,
and
yeah,
appreciate um, what that difference can provide, to an audience, or to performers as well, right? For
yeah,
um, as part of, as just a regular part of the creative process, just like, disabled patrons and artists are just a regular part of the diversity of human
yeah.
experience.
But but what I'm asking is, um, i- is there a difference between um um a relaxed performance and a regular performance, and does does your does those changes that you make during a relaxed performance, does it change the show at all, or does the show remain the same?
Right. That's a great question. I think it's a common misconception that
Yeah,
a relaxed performance will have something missing or something significantly different. Um, but it is a priority most of the time to make sure that
yeah,
story is the same, the emotional experience is the same. And so there's a couple ways that we can prepare people for what is going to happen in a show. So I'll give you an example.
yeah,
This year we had a relaxed performance of Frankenstein Revived,
mm,
which, the story of Frankenstein. It's gothic fiction. It's quite scary and dark at times,
yeah,
a little bit gory. And so we create something called a relaxed guide, that kind of gives people those content notices and key plot
yeah,
points so that they can anticipate, like, oh, this is when, this really scary thing is going to happen. Or this is when there is a gunshot noise, but it would still be there, but not as loud as and intense as in a typical show,
yeah,
or split the lights, like there would still be, darkness and light at the same points in time in the story, but we would eliminate strobe lighting, for example, so that we don't trigger a seizure for people,
mm,
or,
yeah,
still have that like spooky music, but we might cut some of the fog effects so that they don't have
yeah,
like a reaction effect for people. So
right,
um, yeah, we try to maintain the same story, but just with a bit more gentleness and preparation, so that no one has a negative experience, hopefully.
And and I may sound like a broken record, but um, do you find that it's hard to do? Um, uh, is that hard to do, or is it easy to do?
Oh, I mean, like I already mentioned, it really takes a village. Like it takes the cooperation of a lot of people to
Yeah,
consider all those little challenges, right? Like people who
yeah,
do sound design and lighting design. Um, so I think it presents its challenges like anything else. But really, having that mutual preparation and the understanding of why we do a
yeah,
relaxed performance. Um, it just yeah, there's lots of little details to account for, and every show is going to be different, so it can be a new challenge every time. I wouldn't call it easy, but I think there's always um challenges in making art together, and different perspectives, and there's no one way to do a relaxed performance, right? So we try, and maybe we try and fail and try again and learn something and get
uh-huh,
feedback communities. So
yeah,
yeah, I think it's all a learning experience, and I'm really grateful to be able to, share some like educational opportunities with people in design and
yeah,
um, all of that stuff. So I would
yeah,
say, yeah, like anything, it can have its challenges, like any big group project does, but
yeah.
it's really rewarding, I think.
And and what has what has been the audience um what has been the audience um feedback been like when you do those relaxed performances, like what has been the audience um been like? Yeah,
The audience feedback has been so touching. There's been people who've shared, it's the first time they've been able to bring all of their family members to the theater, because it's not been accessible before.
yeah,
Um, or there's people who might be on staff with us who come to a relaxed performance for the first time, and they didn't really know what it was going in, but then they come out
yeah,
and say, oh, I have someone in my life, or a friend or a loved one, who would benefit, so I'm going to bring them to this next time.
yeah,
So those community building moments are really special, um, because I think theater should be for everyone.
yeah. Um, what great message. Um, what what has been the most rewarding part for you since you've been at class?
Oh man. Um, it's hard to pick one moment or one instance,
Well,
but
well, pick one or two.
pick
Yeah,
one or okay. Um, okay, I'll give you an example. So we did ASL interpretation on King
yeah,
Lear just a couple of months ago, and it was so rewarding, one, to have a bunch of deaf folks in the theater and have
yeah,
them be able to experience Shakespeare in their first language. And also the warm welcome that the interpretation team received from all of the actors and stage management, and that they felt part of the team in a way that they don't always. That is what's rewarding to me, is to have the work of accessibility be understood as like just a regular part of the production, and have people excited for the presence of disabled
yeah,
people in the theater. So
yeah,
that that's kind of my mission all the time, is just to get more disabled people into the arts and help. I see my role as removing the labor, um, that like patrons and artists would have to do to participate in the arts, and hopefully they can have a nice time.
I love that. Yeah, yeah. Um, what, okay, what some of the, what, oh, getting, off of this for a minute, what some of the, what some of the accessibility features that the audience will see when they come to the theater?
Sorry, I don't think I caught that. You're asking what kind of accessibility does the audience experience when they come to the theater?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, all the performance types that I mentioned are on offer. Um, there's 4 theaters at the Stratford Festival. I would say some of them are more physically accessible than others because some of them are quite old. But there's accessible parking, we have elevators, we have wheelchair accessible seating. We always allow service animals in the theater. At every show, there are these devices called HARs, hearing assistance receivers. So that
yeah,
makes sound louder for anyone using a hearing aid. And the front of house teams, excuse me, are so amazing in giving that individual support to anyone who might need it, whether it's navigating the theater, or answering questions, or ushering people to their seats. They're always eager to
uh,
support.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, you bring up a really good point. I, before this interview, I was how how service works in the theater. So can you highlight that for a minute?
Can I highlight what? Sorry.
How service animals work when patients come to the theater? Like, is there any is there anything special that the service animal needs to do um for um before they come to the theater, or how does that work?
No, a service animal can be accommodated at any time in any theater. I mean, it is nice if someone wants to call or email ahead of time, and let us know that they're coming with a service animal, because maybe we could place them in a seat that has a bit more space, or a better sight line or something like that. But yeah, nothing special. They're always welcome to bring a service animal as a support.
Yeah. So yeah um say we highlighted some of the areas that you are working on, but what are what are some of the areas that you would like to see would like to see improve in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's always improvements to be made. I think, as I'm sure you know, the work of accessibility is never done, right? There's no such thing as a
No,
fully accessible experience.
no,
One big project that my team is working on right now that I'm really excited about is getting open captions for some of our shows for 2024. So that's an area I'm very excited about, because that will serve, a lot of different audiences who need captions for a variety of reasons. Um,
so
and
how does that work then?
that's a big question. There are a few different ways you can do captions, but we're looking at having these screens that would go at the front of the stage. And then we'll have formatted scripts ahead of time, and then there's someone cueing the captions so they come up at the right time.
Yeah,
Um, perfect world, that'll be more like when you turn on the captions on your television and you can read along while you watch a show, that will serve, deaf patrons or anyone whose first language is not English, or
Mhm.
anyone who just, is confused about Shakespeare in general, and it would be helpful to have the text.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Um. So, what um what um I'm sure there are many um frustrating parts about your job, but what uh is there anything that gets out in your mind as um uh, what what gets you the most frustrating when it comes to disability in the field or what have you? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that, I often wish that some changes could be implemented faster than is just physically possible. So, like I mentioned, some of our buildings are quite old, and there's stairs where I wish there were elevators, or, wish you could snap your fingers and teleport. So, um, it can be frustrating to, not just be able to magically have more accessible parking or more accessible seating. But, we're working within the confines that we have.
Yeah.
Um, but that can be frustrating. Um, just, wishing that we could have all these perfectly beautiful, flat, wide spaces for everyone to walk or wheel through, um,
Yeah.
with the wave of a magic wand. But um, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
physical changes like that can take time and effort.
Yeah. Um. So it, yeah. I totally understand what you're saying because I'm I'm a real speaker going myself, and I I love going to shows and whatnot, and in a ideal world, I I would love to see more accessible seating.
Mhm,
Um, uh, but I understand that is not always the case. But I do think more, more accessible seating would be nice. Yeah,
mhm,
yeah,
def
yeah. So, yeah. Um, what, we're getting a bit short on time here, but, what, 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 what would you like to happen, uh, accessibility wise in the next few months or so?
What am I working on in the next few months?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, Working on securing all of the access workers who will contract for 2024. So all of those wonderful people who will provide the services like interpretation and description, and relaxed consulting. So working on getting all those contracts sorted. Um, and then we'll be working with design teams and directors and everything to begin to chat with them about, okay, there's a relaxed performance on your show, so what does that mean, and what might we need to look to modify, and having those types of meetings, and then before you know it, we'll be back into starting rehearsals for next year, in early 2024. So we'll be looking to plan those pre-rehearsal orientations that we do, and meeting all the new groups of artists, and seeing what they need and getting started on all the wonderful shows we have going on.
Yeah. Um, I I don't know if um I don't know if you can tell me this, but what is um on the what is on the budget for 2024? Like, can you share what is in the work as far as performances or whatnot, or is that a secret?
It was a secret until very recently, but all of the show titles have been announced now. So I can share with you, I think it would be most of interest. I can share with you the accessible performance offerings. So we've got Romeo and Juliet, and that will have dates with audio description, ASL, and a relaxed performance.
Yeah,
Um, we've got 12th Night, so that will have ASL with it on a performance day. The children's show, oh, and 12th Night will also have audio description. We've got Wendy and Peter Pan. That's a children's show, so it will have ASL as well as a relaxed performance. We've got a show called Get That Hope that will be audio described. We've got The Diviners, which is an adaptation of the novel of the same name with audio description.
yeah.
And like I mentioned, hoping to get some of those caption dates on the calendar as well. And you could see the full list of the 12 shows that are at the festival on the Stratford Festival website, stratfordfestival.ca.
Uh, um, yeah, and um, um, on on that website, does it say uh does it say when those special performances are?
Yes, I can send you the link to the accessibility page, and it tells you
Yeah,
the dates, times, and locations of all those access shows. So if anyone
that
watching or listening has any questions about that, you can reach out to me at accessibility@stratfordfestival.ca.
that would be great. Um, um, that would be great, Kayla. Um, so um, be- before we go, is there is there a project that you have not worked on yet that you would like to work on in the future?
Oh yeah, so many. I mean, I would love to have, more disabled actors at Stratford and get the opportunity to work with them. That would be amazing. I would love to do
Um,
shows with deaf actors that include shadow interpretation. So that's where each character is cast with a hearing actor and a deaf actor, and they perform simultaneously in those two languages on stage. I think that would be so amazing. So maybe someday in the future, I would love to support that kind of work.
yeah, and um you mentioned having deaf actors, no, um, disabled actors on stage. But
Mhm.
um, does that does Bradford have that very much at the moment, or um uh it, yeah, yeah.
We're in between seasons at the moment, so I can't speak to, absolutely everyone who will be working on stage in 2024. But in 2023, we had a dear friend and colleague of mine, Debbie Patterson. Debbie is an actor and a wheelchair user, and she was in Richard II and Grand Magic, which was so fantastic. So yeah, Debbie runs a theater company called Sick and Twisted in Winnipeg, in Canada. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was really awesome to get to work with her. And like I said, I hope we have more disabled actors on our stages in the future.
So is it just um is it just deadline have at the moment, or um is there more disab- disabled actors that you have? I know you're um in between seasons at the moment, but has there, has there been more disabled actors in the past, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar because I was only here for the past year, so there,
Yeah,
there may have
right.
been
Yeah,
some. I was working
yeah,
here. Of course, there are individuals with maybe some less visible disabilities, right?
yeah,
Um, um, or things that are kind of more episodic in how they present, or some non-physical disabilities. I know blind actor Alex Ballmer worked at Stratford and did a performance, like an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet called R&J before. Um, deaf actor Elizabeth Morris has worked at Stratford before, and she's provided some amazing videos in ASL for us over the past season. So yeah, there's definitely some
yeah,
folks.
yeah. Um, has has the cast been has any of it been finalized for 2024, or are you still working on
Um, the cast announcement was shared just yesterday, actually, on November 7th. So that's something else you could find
it? Yeah,
on our website. So
yeah.
yeah.
Uh, and are any of the casting choices disabled or not?
I haven't met everybody yet. It was literally announced yesterday, so I
Yeah,
am forward to meeting everyone and seeing, what
yeah,
kind of supports are needed, and what kind of cast community supports, might be in place. So we'll see.
yeah. So, uh, yeah. So, uh, I, um, I, I'm excited to see what you do in the future. So,
Yeah,
um,
thank you, Danny. I hope you can come out to some shows in 2024 and bring some friends.
yeah. Um, what, but, but before we go, um, I, I always met my death. I always met my death ask me any question, one question that they want
Love
to
that.
will answer. Um, go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Um, hmm. Have you had any noteworthy experiences in as a theater patron that you worth sharing?
Um, good question. Um, um, uh, you mean no worry as an actor, or just as a patron, or an audience member? Like, what?
Whichever. Yeah,
Yeah.
either.
Um. Uh. um, not, not really, knowable, um, not worth, not worth mentioning, but, I, I am, I am, quite, quite involved with grading entertainment, uh, I'm I'm supporter of their um theater company and um uh I I I I do know that uh the texting uh artistic director um of that company David David Hong David Connolly has a disability himself.
Mm,
So, um, so, um, I do know that accessibility, accessibility is on his radar,
mm,
and, and Alex, and Alex, the project, who is the CEO of that company has been really supportive when it comes to accessibility. So I do know I do know that it's coming. It's like 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 you were saying, it comes time forward than we would like. So yeah, great great question.
thank
Um,
you.
um, so yeah, so, um,
Oh, sorry, I think your audio just cut out for a few moments.
if anyone is watching this and they want more information, um, how,
Mm.
how do, how do they find more information?
Yeah, as I mentioned, folks can send me an email at accessibility@stratfordfestival.ca, or on the website, you can go to stratfordfestival.ca/visit/accessibility. And that has all of the access information as well as the show dates for those offerings that we talked about.
Yeah, great, great, great information, Kayla. Um, so, so what would be, what would, what would be your, your final message to my audience today?
My final message is that if you're a disabled person and you have been nervous about going to the theater because you've had a less than desirable experience before, I hope that you take a chance on coming out to the Stratford Festival next year. And I so look forward to supporting you in that visit as best that I can, because like I said, I think theater should be for everybody, and I'm really eager to support, as accessible of a time as I could. So please reach out if you would like to chat.
Um, and are you, are you always on site during, during the performances, or how does that work?
I am on on site for a lot of the accessible shows. I don't work in Stratford every single day. I actually live in Guelph, Ontario. And that's one way that I meet my own access needs. I don't drive, so I do work remotely a lot. I'm in my living room right now, but I am available via email, or we could chat over the phone if that's more accessible for people. But the relaxed performances for sure, I'm in attendance at. So I'd like to see some of you there. I hope I do next year.
Yeah. Um. All right. Um. All right. Also, thank you for joining me today, and all of the best to you in the future.
Thanks, Danny. You too. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
And and we will be right back with more possibilities, right? Right after this. Stay tuned, everyone. Wasn't that a great um interview with Kayla Besse? I know that she has a bright future ahead of her when it comes to accessibility. So, um, uh, yeah, uh, she is doing great work. So, um, uh, if if you want, if you want more information on any of the stuff you mentioned, you can go to um Blackburn Festival at .ca, and the link will be in the description of this video. So go ahead and click on the link. So that's all for me today. So if you want to get in touch with me at the show, you can email me at possible possibility to.com, and would love to hear from you. So until next time, keep the gift of disability, and we'll see you next time. Take care.